I'll kick off. When it comes to sports innovation, I guess from my perspective, I think this industry's at a really interesting moment where probably for the last few years, really since the inception, post-PASPA, for the first 3 or 4 years certainly, it seems to me anyway that a lot of the industry has been dominated by bringing in what already exists in terms of global sports betting product and bringing it to the States and maybe updating it, maybe sort of tweaking it a little bit. It feels like we are at the point where the sports betting innovation that's US-centric is starting to really take over. I was having a quick chat with Chris before about this. Maybe we're already at that point, maybe we're already through it. But we're certainly at the point where US-centric innovation is probably going to be driving not just the industry here, but at some point probably driving the global industry and being re-exported back out to it. It's really becoming the sort of centre of it. So that's, I guess, the sort of start point for debate. Chris, we spoke a little bit about this before. Do you think that's fair, or do you think I'm underselling it? Do you think we're sort of already there in terms of the US-centric product really taking over?
No, I think we're right. Like we were talking earlier, at that inflection point, as we've just seen in terms of our product. Simplebet, we're a technology company, and we built a platform that enables real-time live in-play betting, particularly micro betting, so you can bet on every occurrence in a baseball game or football, basketball, or our main products. And just by virtue of being out with this product now, we're almost 2 years live, and it's getting some pretty broad distribution. And we're seeing that just those micro market products are about 25 to 30% of all the in-play handle, and maybe close to 40% of the GGR on our partners. So it feels like we're at the tipping point of this just being like a must-have product for the end users, and now the marketing and all the platform of our, I should say, the marketing platforms of our operators are now really starting to focus that as a real product innovation and differentiator.
Mia, from Kambi's point of view, Kambi's obviously a leading supplier globally. So how do you see that question? Is that something that's really starting to drive what Kambi's doing in terms of innovation? How do you see that sort of importing, exporting of innovation?
Yeah, I find this question quite interesting because there have been very little innovations industry recently, I must say. Just looking at same game parlays, I mean, we started with that in 2000, well, to a very small scale. Or take the street bookies. I mean, they did this 20 years ago. Or even micro betting. We started to offer odds on every single point in tennis in 2008. So it's nothing really new. For us, what is new is that the technology enables us to do it in a much larger scale. And for us, there are 2 key drivers. And the first one is my favorite, actually, and that's third-generation trading. And for those who don't know about this, first-generation trading is actually when you publish odds by a human. Second generation is human with machines, and now we have machines assisted by humans. So technology is really driving this. And for us, we can have a much broader offering, but we can also, of course, set better odds, but also in a much more cost-efficient way. So it's very, very exciting times for us, really, now.
And Mike, perhaps I'll throw it down the end for you to offer your perspective on the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, what we're excited about is really thinking about how the fan and the bettor's experience is going to change. Like, we think this technology, as technology evolves, and the thing that we're trying to build at Second Spectrum is the ability to integrate, all the experiences you care about with live video in real time. So, and really ultimately get a personalized experience for a fan or a bettor. So if I care about a line, or if I care about anything in the game, the live video that I'm watching can have that information embedded into it in real time. And I think Mia was getting at this. I think the key to be able to do that, and the reason why sometimes sports has been slow to have innovation, is you need to automate the whole thing, because you're working with live real time video, and that ability to do it in real time without having a kind of human involved in the process, to us is critical. And so we think that as the U.S. market evolves and these technologies kind of evolve with them, it's going to be a really exciting time, and I think there's a lot to come in the near future.
There's a lot to get into there in terms of technology and some of the enablers, and I definitely also want to cover a little bit later some of the potential bottlenecks in all of this. But one of the other interesting things I think about with the US is maybe that the group of partners and the sort of ecosystem that's going to help incubate some of this growth looks maybe a bit more collaborative or a bit more broad, I think, than say in other global markets. Kelly, I just wanted to pick up with you in that regard in terms of some of the stuff you're doing with the leagues. Appreciate that's similar with you, Mike, and what Second Spectrum are doing with, you know, direct integrations or stuff with the leagues. You've recently had a NBA partnership announced of some sort. So could you talk a little bit about how those kind of counterparties can help drive innovation in the space too?
Yeah, so we're starting to see a lot more partners come together. Excuse me. And what's exciting about that is we used to have it was a closed ecosystem, if you will, like very much do in-house what now all of a sudden demand, thanks to legalization and thanks to some great work with microbetting over the last couple of years. We're starting to see this need for more, which is inspiring more innovation. And so as we bring the leagues in, and the leagues are the ones that are most inspired to satisfy their fans. So we've partnered up with MLB Network and Apple TV to start to show more analytics on screen to start to drive that demand, and recently announced NBA, where we're curating suites of microbets through their Launchpad program to start to drive innovation to best suit the game. It's not just about putting out thousands of microbets in a game, which when we get to this world of machine learning, which is pretty much our superpower as a tech platform, we can generate every bet you'd ever want in real time. But how do we actually drive that where it complements the game? And that's what we are really excited to do with the leagues, because they have this unique and deep knowledge of their fans. And that's where we're headed. Microbets, what they were last year, is different than it is today, and it's going to be different tomorrow. So our technology platforms, by partnering up with leagues and entities and rights holders, is going to drive an incredible amount of excitement in the space. And we're just really cool, or we're really pumped to work with the NBA. It's cool.
Mike, same to you. I guess leagues is a really important part of your business partnership. Any sort of further comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the leagues are where the action is, right? They kind of are the rights holder for the things that we all care about that are going on, and so we partner with them to be the data collection layer, right? So like we have our optical tracking systems across the NBA and English Premier League to kind of in real time create that foundational data layer that I think ultimately powers a lot of stuff that goes downstream in the ecosystem. And then, folks like who are on this panel today can create these micro betting markets on top of that. And then the other piece that I keep coming back to is like, for me, a big part of the future is how this all lives in the live video experience, right? So I can be watching a game, and the micro bet that I might want to place on a player is going to float over his head or be at his feet, so that it's all integrated into one experience, and that I don't have to have 3 different apps up and kind of be tracking this across a bunch of different places. And as sports digitizes, you can add that interactivity layer as well. And so we think that well, our kind of core responsibility is in that first data collection layer, and then bringing some of these things together with video. We think that there's just a lot to be excited about.
I want to come back to the technology angle in a sec, but just follow up on that quickly, Chris, in terms of engagement. And you're saying that micro markets are already becoming a pretty significant chunk of the handle, and more of GGR. So it's obviously everyone likes high margin products. But have you got any kind of snippets you can give us around what microbetting actually means for the engagement side of things for fans, rather than just
Yeah, I mean, operators talk about this all the time, like the stickiness, right? And engagement really is velocity and bet volume and number of bets and bets per user, and we've seen that obviously going up and to the right, and it's a very it's not really a punter's product, really. It's really more for a casual fan, and it enhances the entertainment value of the game that you're invested in watching. And it's really, it's instant gratification, right? You're bringing, like, we're going to roll out a product in the next few weeks I'm really excited about. It's not same game parlays, it's same inning parlays, right? So now you have Aaron Judge is going to get a double, and he's batting against Aaron Nola of the Phillies. He's going to get 2 strikeouts, and the Yankees are going to score a run. So you're taking the parlay concept and you're putting it into an inning, and that's 100-to-1 odd product, right? You bet $10, you win 1,000 if you get it right? So that type of stickiness, and we had a free-to-play product on the Yankees this year on the Yes Network, as an example, offering at-bat level markets where you could bet on what's going to happen on this at-bat. It's in real time, a single screen experience, and users were betting 44, 45 times a game. Like, that's really sticky, right? You're spending time watching the game, which is, to Mike's point, why the leagues love it, right? They're just trying to drive engagement because 50, 60% of their entire industry revenue comes from media, right? So if you get people watching longer, it's going to be worth more as a media product.
Absolutely. Dean, can I pass over to you? You're looking at customer engagement from a sort of different angle to, I guess, quite a few people on this sort of panel. So can you talk about what it is about what you're doing with product that you think is attractive to consumers? How are you approaching this kind of question?
Yeah, I think it kind of ties into your first question. It's, are we at an inflection point? And in short, I think the answer is yes, because we've given ourselves enough time to get to where we needed to be. What people like about our product, for some background, I run a peer-to-peer high-frequency betting exchange. It works just like an options market or just like the New York Stock Exchange. You can put out bids and offers on sporting outcomes. And what people like about that is, number one, when they're trading with their peers, they're ultimately getting better prices on each side, right? That's number one. If you're flipping a coin against your friend, it's better than betting at -110 against the sportsbook. Number two, what people like is they can request their own price and just let it sit there for a period of time. If their price moves favorably in their direction, they can let it sit there. It gets filled. They get a bet on the game that they necessarily wouldn't be able to get on their sportsbook, and then finally they can put as much action down as they want. So what we've been seeing is people are taking, I'll say, a high interest in the new experience. It's definitely a learning curve, but I think I'm sitting, or Profit is sitting at one end of the market, whereas most of the people I'm up here with, it's more of a, it's almost, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but it's almost like sports betting lottery, whereas mine is more sports betting for the very seasoned, sharper, or whale volume player, I'll say.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because we've seen sort of over rounds creep up in the US market already from the levels they sort of started at, but clearly the direction of travel with products is towards higher and higher margin products. We're seeing that constantly because it's there's an argument about monetization, but it's also clearly transformational for P&L. But there isn't really at this stage, as it seems, an operator who's willing to try and drive a very sort of price-led product. It's very sort of similar pricing, and then the focus is on the sort of product side of it. Do you think that an operator could do that feasibly, or do you think that really it's about the difference in the model, that you'll always be able to provide a sharper price because of literally the platform you're running, or do you think there is a chance that competitors over time could look to price down, as perhaps there is a bit more price competition in some other markets globally?
I think there's a reason every sportsbook in the world has -110, right? It's because maybe Circa has -108, but it's because you can't run all of your overhead, all your marketing costs, especially in the US, all of your promotional costs, and make a profit. Are any of them profitable right now? No. And they're sitting at -110. I don't see them going down to -105. That's why the exchange is necessary. And then on the flip side, Chris was talking about same inning betting, which is, I heard that and I was like, wow, I love that. I would love to do that. But obviously, naturally, with that product comes a higher overround, and that's something the exchange will probably never get to, right? Is let's call it a 5% overround on a same inning parlay that I don't know if we'll ever be able to get there, but there's a reason why for so many years that every sportsbook has been sitting at the same price.
And in terms of some of the broader enablers, it's come up across everyone's points really about technology and automation, and kind of one of the topics that comes up a lot is sort of latency and the importance of driving that down and getting that to a point. Can we talk a little bit about that as as an opportunity or to some extent as a barrier that needs to be overcome in terms of some of the innovation that you're looking at in your different spaces? And I'll throw it down to Mike at the end to start with.
Yeah, again, I think that to unlock some of the new products that we want to put into the market, and I think Chris made this great point, right? That like we need to make sports more engaging, right? Like the content is just getting increasingly competitive as more is out there, you know, in sports, outside of sports. And so to me, one big area you can do that is by changing the live experience, changing the live video viewing experience, and kind of integrating whether it's micro betting or, you know, other fan experiences, personalization. None of that works if you can't operate at incredibly low latencies, right? And so I think for us, that always takes us back to using technology to automate at a sub-second latency the creation of kind of all the sports data that you need. And for us, that's what powers the ability to do anything you want to do on a product innovation side downstream, whether it's creating micro markets, whether it's integrating some of these experiences into video, whether it's allowing fans to interact with their video or to kind of, you know, basically have a personalized video stream. You can't have, you know, if you have 1 billion people watching the World Cup, you can't have 1 billion people producing those games to personalize it. You need to leverage, you know, technology and artificial intelligence, and it needs to happen in less than a second. And so that's what our focus from a technology standpoint is to be able to deliver that data and some of those products on top of it, and empower all these other things that folks in the ecosystem can do.
Chris, maybe follow up?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, latency is a bit of a misunderstood. I mean, to Mike's point, when we get the live low latency feed, right, from Genius or Radar, or in our case, we get it in under a second, and then we do what we do in a half a second. So we're about a second and a half after the event in the stadium happens. And the video, if you watch it, because most betting obviously right now is on a second screen, and if you're watching the way most people watch through a set-top box, right, you're probably 7, 8, 9 seconds behind. So there's that little window, right? And what we've seen, and we wouldn't be seeing the volume and the usage that we're seeing if that was a real inhibitor. Probably the toughest one for us has been baseball in that in the pitch level markets, right? So is this next pitch going to be ball striker in play, or is the next pitch going to be 96.5 miles an hour or higher? Those two markets were 52% of all of our volume. So if the latency was an issue, right, because we've been able to create our technology that keeps those markets open for as long as possible, so the user has a chance to put the wager in. And you know, if you're on a streaming device, right, you're going to be 30, 40, 50 seconds behind, but that's still the minority of consumption. But to Mike's point, like we're in this transition, right, from what I call a wholesale media model, right, where programmers sell to distributors and then distributors sell to the that's mass. Now we're in transition to personalized media and direct to consumer. And the video latency technology, you know, like Second Spectrum or Phoenix, right? That's like sub-second latency video. It already exists, but it's mucked up in all the rights agreements. So all this next cycle of new rights, NBA is going to do their new deal. NFL just did their deal. They have a Sunday Ticket on YouTube. You can almost bet there's going to be a betting feed on that low latency video. Sort of like on Caesars did Sunday Night Football this year. They had it in their app, a stream for Sunday Night Football, and it was about 4 or 5 seconds behind. That's pretty darn close to like the lowest latency, because the leagues don't necessarily want zero latency because everybody wants to do ad insertions. You need time to do ad insertions, right? You got to monetize it. So there's like the sweet spot where you're trying to get to probably 3, 4 seconds, and that really becomes the killer product. If you could have low latency video on the top of a screen and all the markets below, and like Kelly and her team is working on, like the NBA talks about contextualizing, right? It's one thing to offer a zillion bets, but you have to offer the right betting opportunity to the right user at the right time, and it's got to be in context, right? Contextual, right? Scott Kaufman, I mean, he talks to you about contextualizing all this all the time, right? So I think all those things coming together, and all the technology exists. It just needs to be sorted out with all the right stuff.
And how long do you think that cycle then takes? Is that a sort of multi-year?
I mean, it's already happening now. I just mentioned Caesars in Sunday Night Football. I mean, I think you're just going to see more and more of that, especially as we go to direct-to-consumer. So
yeah,
I think
I would
you're
just
here.
add, like, I think we're there technically. There's still, you know, some rights and business negotiations to figure out, but I think the technology is there today. And I think Chris articulated it really well. Like, you've seen this happen across every other content industry, right? Technology and data are used to personalize experiences, from music to movies to, you know, all the way down the line. And sports has been slow to get there, largely because we've lived in this mass market model, largely because the latency has been an inhibitor. And I think we're there now from a technical foundation point, and it's just about getting these products out into the market. And I think you're going to start to see it more and more, especially as some of these digital players become serious sports rights holders.
So there's something really important to consider as we're thinking about this. So while this latency and the rights problems are getting resolved, which they are, it's going to take some time, but it's a complex problem. But what drives all of the streamers to change their whole stack? What's going to make a media company radically overhaul everything they're doing? And it's demand. And if we put out the same types of bets and they're dry and they're over and over and over again, I don't think that we're going to see I don't think the demand will drive the big technology shift. But what if you could change what we're seeing to drive demand? Like, let me use an example. So we're a Texas-based company. So when Brett Maher kept missing extra points, it was very painful. So would you ever want to bet on an extra point bet? Like, that's probably not one that an operator would pick up on. But by the time he missed his third, do you want to bet on that bet? And so being able to use technology to drive demand and to sense when fans are excited and when they're going to bet, that'll drive handle, that will drive revenue, which will then inspire some of those big moves and shifts to happen. So we've got to do all of this at the same time instead of just wait. Like, if we just wait for the latency problems to be solved, then I think we're going to have some disappointing and flat results until we figure the rest out. So what's really exciting about all of us up here is we're solving technology at the same time. We're opening up the ecosystem so that we're driving different things to answer all of these problems. And that's what's really, really incredible about where we're at as an industry.
I have an interesting stat. So I used to live in the UK and operate our platform out there, and they are obviously a little more advanced than us in the US. It's been around for 60 years. Bet365 had, I don't remember what league tennis, but it was a really deep, deep league, and I was my natural self. I was live betting the tennis at like 3 in the morning, whatever it was, and the latency was incredible. It was like almost to the second, where the price on their screen would update as the tennis match was going on. I don't know if any of you watch Thursday Night Football, but I can't live bet on my phone when Amazon has a 2-minute delay, because I look at my phone and I know what's about to happen. So it just completely ruins the experience. With my platform in particular, something that is difficult is that if you have two peers playing against each other and one is sitting at the game and the other one is sitting at home on their TV, the one at the game has an 8-second advantage. So how do we combat that? That's a very difficult problem to solve. But if we could get everyone on the same latency schedule, then that drives live betting through the charts. I think I saw a stat when I was, again, living in the UK that live betting, if you are watching the game, you are 5 times more likely to bet on it. So just wanted to echo that. It is a very key problem to solve, and I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're getting pretty close.
So it sounds like that kind of latency shift over whatever the time frame is, 1, 2, 3 years. It sounds like broadly, panel thinks that that's going to drive a step up in in-play adoption in general. You're talking the sort of second screen kind of dynamic, and also from an exchange point of view, just drive the depth of those markets or liquidity on those markets as people aren't fearful, or I guess the other way, but you don't have to sort of gatekeep, Dean, the kind of protection of the counterparty.
Exactly. You know, how do you solve for that problem, right? Something that we've been thinking about is, do you bake in the delay into the price? So let's say another way to do it is, you know, I can have people sit at the game, right, and press a button and feeds into our system, and then our price can update accordingly. But then at that point, we're just a sports book, right, and we're taking action. How do you facilitate it for peer-to-peer? What our liquidity providers do is they have very large trading teams. They operate just like kind of like a Kambi would, where they have people sitting at the games and they're updating prices accordingly. But we have to build something where it's almost like we have to segment it, and then if you segment it, then it gets into like, do you separate the liquidity pools, and that gets into a whole swath of new issues. But yeah, I guess I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but it's a difficult problem to solve, one we're thinking about, and we're live 7 months. We're not quite there yet, but I'm sure these guys up on the stage are a little ahead of us and helping us solve the problem.
Yeah, I find it very interesting. I start talking about third-generation trading, and of course, the key driver here is to have the data. And I'm very fascinated to hear more about what you have, Michael. But so I used to give an example what algorithmic trading does for us. We rolled it out for the World Cup, and as soon as the final whistle was blown after the group stages, we just pushed a button, and in 90 seconds, all the pre-match offering was set. And that used to take us 5 hours minimum. I mean, imagine how much faster we can do it having these kind of products. And as I said, third-generation trading is machines assisted by humans. But I think at some point we will actually get to the point when we don't need humans anymore. But we still do need humans in case if a tennis player gets injured, for example. That's not yet, we don't have data for that. But I mean, there is technology where you can, for example, custom can identify if people are nervous from their eyes. That's of course something we can use in sports betting to set accurate odds. So for us, limit is the data, but I think we're getting there. And as I said, I'm super excited to hear about second sector and what you guys are doing. But I think we're coming there. Fourth generation trading, I think.
Yeah, I think it sounds good for the OPEX outlook for Kambi if you don't need people one day. In terms of, I'd say actually, Mia, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, so we saw you at ICE when Eric was there, the COO. One of the interesting things that I hadn't considered before about the way that betting is changing is that, typically the way that odds work is that you're publishing odds. But the way a same-game parlay needs to work is the opposite of that, where the player is pushing what they want, and that's a interrogation, but then the system needs to come up with the answer quickly and come back. And that was another example where I hadn't really considered when the market generally talks about how difficult SGP is to get right, all that kind of thing. That's sort of one of those technology challenges that's clearly taking people a long time to get to.
Very good question, because 5 years ago we actually took a decision. We thought that same-game parlays and a bet builder would be the new way of betting, the new norm. But we also knew that we need to actually change the way we store the bets, the way we present the bets completely. So we did quite significant changes to actually be able to get speed and innovation, and we are there now. We launched multi-builder, which is several bet builders, and I think we were alone 1 year on the market with that. And now I think 70% of all bet builders are multi-builders. So we really have a key asset here. We won an award here recently for the most innovative product with our bet builders. And it's so hard because, as you said, before we published a bet and the end user was picking the odds. Now, I'm as end user saying I'm going to bet this and this. The bookmaker needs to calculate odds and then present it. And you have endless of correlations. So this is super hard. So most of the operators out there actually using suppliers. And we have decided and announced to the market in January that we're going to sell this as models. So super exciting time for Kambi where we really can capitalize on our market-leading technology.
One of the points that gets raised repeatedly, I certainly know what some of the opinions will be on the panel here, is around how to what extent the US market is uniquely suited to in-play, because that's one of the kind of drivers of what we said today is that essentially the technology, the rights sort of system, the focus of innovation is all leading towards driving in-play higher. But you mentioned earlier, Dean, about tennis. 80-90% of tennis can be in play quite comfortably. And at the moment, we're obviously are way behind that in the US, but it's accelerating quickly. So I'll ask Chris first. I think I know the angle you're going to go with, but I'd love to hear how you think about contextualizing what the opportunity is. It's clearly massive ahead of where we are now, but how do you think about the uniqueness, if you like, of the US market and in play?
Yeah, I mean, we started the company, next month will be 5-year anniversary, and we by design focused on the US market and US sports because of the cadence of US sports, football, baseball, and basketball. So we got 5 sports, including college basketball, college football. And the number of incidents, there's 900,000 pitches in a baseball season, 175,000 at bats, right? And then you have multiple markets, 40,000, 50,000 plays in an NFL season. And so all of those, the technology platform we built was by design around US sports because of the cadence. But the one thing that, none of us have talked about yet, where I think, like if you look out now, there's 62, 63 sportsbook operators, right? But there's 5 that have 90% of the market, and there's less than 10 million customer accounts. Yet we live in a country that, depending on the study that you follow or you look at it, that says 100 to 120 million people in the United States bet on sports, whether it's March Madness pools and brackets or Super Bowl boxes. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how do you create a product, right, that is accessible to the mass market, right? And where there hasn't really been much innovation at all, right, is in contextualizing. We were talking about it earlier, right, surfacing the right. So I think you're going to see a lot of innovation in that over the next couple of years. But then the UX, right? Mm. These are really complicated products for a new casual fan to come in and navigate. So there just has to be a lot of investment into the contextual piece and the UI, UX, and the customer journey, because there's a lot of casual fans out there that would probably do this if it was presented to them the right way. So there's a huge opportunity to go from where we are today to bring in the casual fan, and that's how everybody succeeds in just making the industry and the ecosystem bigger.
I saw you nodding down the end there, Mike, vigorously.
I feel the same way. I mean, it's the product that I want. I come from a technology side. I probably know the least about the betting markets of kind of anybody at this conference. But like the idea that the U.S. betting market is evolving at the same time the technology is evolving, I think is going to be a really interesting unlock. Because the product I want is to be able to sit on my phone or my tablet and watch a game and have all the right things that I care about pop up to me as options, and whatever I choose to bet on or my fantasy team or whatever it is gets highlighted on the screen so I can kind of watch and follow along and get that payoff with me. And I think it's that type of product that a casual fan wants and or a kind of a new entrant in the market wants. And I think we're trying to develop that so it comes on the market at the same time the kind of US continues to grow and mature. And I think the fact that those two things are happening together just kind of poises us for quite a lot of growth.
So what I love about this whole thing is that we're addressing a brand new market. So what we're talking about, giving bets to the Super Bowl party that includes my mom and my kids and my husband and a whole group of us, that a lot of non-traditional sports bettors, which, Chris, that's exactly what you're saying. We're betting. We're just not betting on the Caesars app. We're betting with each other. We're making strange bets. We're betting on things that maybe you don't normally do. But the apps that are out there today are asking us, first of all, we have to live in the state where we can do it. Texas is not quite there, but we have to understand this new lingo and this new terminology. We're trying to force fit things into the casual fan that they're not yet, and maybe they'll never will be ready for. They just want to watch the game and enjoy it and say, will Altuve get a hit? That's what I care about. But if you're a Yankees fan, you care about, will Altuve not get a hit? And so we need to understand that these bets are for different people, and that's why we need a lot of them. So yeah, like 500 markets in 90 seconds, I think was for the World Cup, like really impressive. With machine learning, we can do that. But how do we make it where we can reach everybody at that Super Bowl party in a way that will satisfy them? By the way, my mom is 80 years old, and she would gladly make a bet. But if you presented it to her as an over/under on something, she'll fly right by, but she'll get into it. And that's what we need to do. We need to recognize that we need new bets. We need new ways to present the bets. We need new UX and UI, and we need it to be exciting and with a game that we love. All you have to do is watch the fan. And that's what we've done for many, many years. That's before I founded nVenue. That's what I did for many, many years, is watch fans. What do? They if we can give them the ability to bet like they do in real life, then we all win.
Yeah, I think UX is super important, and we actually acquired Shape Games in September because we felt it's so important to make this personalized, customized for the end user, and especially now with bet builders, and you have all this offering. I don't want to sit and scroll lists, and I want it to be personalized for me. I want it to be fun, engaging, and that's super important, especially here in the US, and something that all operators need to adapt to.
Yeah, we saw a couple of the large operators yesterday. One of them raised a good point that actually, whether it's the legacy of fantasy football or not, a lot of US sport is built around the kind of the personalities within it. You think of a basketball game in terms of who could get a triple-double or who could score, X number of 3 points, or who's going to throw X number of touchdowns, and sort of, as you say, it's a different way of driving it than just looking at the classic over-under or whatever. And maybe if 80-year-old Texas grandmas are betting, that's the reason why the US TAM is going to be so enormous as well. Dean, how do you think about the challenge of getting the users to understand what it is? Because I think exchanges in Europe certainly, and perhaps that's underinvestment and a lack of focus on the kind of customer side of it, have sometimes struggled to get people to understand what exactly they can do with it. So how do you see that challenge, or is it kind of less important given you're catering towards a sharper end of the market?
No, it's a good question because we want everyone in the ecosystem under one platform. That's how you build the best exchange. The way we think about it, number one, is we need to start by making the platform as familiar as possible to users. So if you go on our platform, we just launched our new homepage. It looks just like a FanDuel, DraftKings, Caesars, whoever it may be. You need, going back to latency, you need to provide them the easiest path to make a bet. So 67% of all of FanDuel's bets were placed on their homepage this year. We just launched our new homepage a week ago, and we're up to 35%. So 2 clicks to place a bet, right? That's also pretty key. And then weaving in the key features that we have into that sportsbook experience, that's the mantra that we've taken. I think as people start to understand the exchange more and more, honestly, we just need time, as simple as it sounds. And then as it becomes a mainstay in this market, then we can look to maybe innovate a little bit further. But right now, it's just about making it as familiar as possible for users.
Great. We've got just a couple of minutes left. I did promise at the start that I would offer the audience a chance to ask a question. I'm looking across, and there's a lot of faces looking away, so perhaps there isn't a burning question from the floor. I think we'll end there. That's a good note to end on. Thank you so much for everyone on the panel for joining us today. Super interesting discussion, and clearly very exciting times ahead. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Sure.